Well, I've been waiting for this for a long time. There is a type of endangered species, a very, very rare species that only arises it isn't endangered because its environment is threatened. This species only arises in a threatening environment, an environment that is plagued with moral ambiguity. This species arises only when there is incredible pressure put on this particular breed. It arises under these circumstances, not when things get a little bit better, but when things actually get worse. And the thing that distinguishes this very, very rare species, the thing that distinguishes them is that they do the right thing. They do the right thing when it is not easy. They do the right thing when it is almost certainly to kill them, when it is certain to ruin them. They take unimaginable risks to do the right thing. The speaker that we bring to you now was under that environment, and she did the right thing. She took the risks. She is coming here to talk to us about it today. You know what that species is. It is the rare species of the whistleblower, the person who tells the truth, the person who takes the risks. And we know from experience that that person is rarely rewarded. Through all the 2008 financial crises, people that blew the whistles on things that banks were doing, their lives were ruined. There was nothing for them in the end. It is a huge risk, and it almost never, ever pays off. In this case, an issue was raised. This was the issue of the Cambridge Analytica relationship with Facebook and the relationship with your data. Every one of you in here that has a Facebook account was impacted by this, and the woman that is coming to speak to you now has made a difference by bringing this to light. Now, she did not just blow the whistle and fade away into obscurity. She learned, and she is still learning, and she is taking what she learned there and using the future promised by blockchain to find a better way forward. She's the founder of the Digital Asset Trade Association. She is the subject of the recently released Sundance film and documentary about her experience as a whistleblower, The Great Hack. That film will be released on Netflix in July, but today, she is at Block 020 at Hong Kong Blockchain Week. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together to thank her for helping you and moving us forward. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brittany Kaiser. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to be here. Hi, everybody. I am in one of the best cities in the world. I used to live in Hong Kong in 2007 and 2008. I actually went to City U and lived in Kowloon Tong, so I really have to say it's such a pleasure to be back in really my favorite city on the planet. So I am here to talk to you today about owning your data, the Own Your Data campaign that I started last year, and I call this talk Lessons Learned from the Past in Order to Protect Our Future. Now, why are we talking about data? The Economist said in 2017 that data surpassed oil and gas as the world's most valuable asset. You might often hear these days people say data is the new oil. And in terms of its value, it's absolutely true. Most of the world's most valuable companies, including Facebook, Google, Uber, Amazon, Tesla, these companies are worth trillions and trillions of dollars because they hold your digital assets, your personal data sets. Now, what does data have to do with blockchain? Most of you should probably know in the room, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur or a speculator or a trader, that the blockchain is actually a distributed, and when you're talking about public blockchains, a transparent way of handling data and managing data, right? And your blockchain tokens that are so valuable are just encrypted blocks of data. So when we're talking about distributed ledger technology, we're talking about digital assets and different asset classes within digital assets. When we're talking about your personal data that is worth those trillions of dollars collected by these companies, we are also talking about digital assets. Now, why am I the right person to talk to you about this? I've been working in tech for about 15 years. I started when I was working in political communications, first for Howard Dean's campaign, and then in 2007, I joined Senator Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. I created his Facebook page and started working on data sets in order to create the first ever version of social media strategy. When I was at the Obama campaign, nobody had ever used social media for a communications campaign before. Not a brand, no companies, and definitely no politicians. So that was pretty exciting, and for the past 12 years, I have gotten very deep into the industry. I spent about a decade working in data-driven marketing communications for human rights organizations around the world, United Nations, NGOs, and charities where I really believed in their cause. Now, I was studying as a human rights lawyer, and I got into the third year of my PhD, chapter number 3, and I start writing about big data. How can you use data sets in order to predict impending crises? How can you understand that war or massive violent crime is about to happen? It's all about how you can collect people's personal data, data on social media all over the globe, and build predictive algorithms in order to head off these conflicts before they happen. Now, nobody at my law school could teach me about that, so I ended up working at a company you've probably heard of called Cambridge Analytica, which I joined in 2014. Now, while I was working at Cambridge Analytica, I also started getting deep into app development and really getting excited about blockchain technology. That was something that I always was passionate about, but I started to really explore it and think about how Cambridge Analytica might be able to help the industry. Could we market different blockchain companies? Could we actually start building different forms of distributed ledger technology ourselves? And what was my concentration? Everything I ended up working on was helping individuals own their data. How could you possess the data sets that you created every day and monetize them yourself? How could you have more transparent opt-in infrastructure so you knew what you were agreeing to and you were sharing in the profits? Now, while I was near the end of my time at Cambridge Analytica last January, something really magical happened. You guys have probably heard of a gentleman called Mr. Brock Pierce, who's one of the fathers of the blockchain industry. Now, he decided to tell a group of us that, hey, did anybody know that the first ever blockchain laws were just put into the Congress in Wyoming? This was announced on January 20th of last year, 2018. Now, I've studied as a lawyer, I've worked as a lobbyist at the United Nations, the European Parliament, and I understand what it means when a new bill is put into Congress. It means that all of the legislators are going to start debating the positives and negatives of these laws and whether or not those are good for the state or good for a country. So, if you guys don't know this woman's name, Caitlin Long, you probably should. Caitlin Long was the woman who spearheaded the first ever blockchain positive legislation in the United States. There's one negative law in the state of New York, which makes it really hard for entrepreneurs to work in that state. Now, the reason why Caitlin started doing this, Caitlin went to the University of Wyoming Laramie before going to Harvard, and she wanted to donate to her alma mater in Bitcoin. Now, the laws in the state of Wyoming did not allow her to do that because of the Money Transmitters Act. So she wasn't a woman to be defeated and started writing a legal exemption for Bitcoin and blockchain tokens under the Money Transmitters Act. And when that got a little bit of attention, and she found some members of the House and Senate in the state of Wyoming that were excited about that, she put together what's called the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition and wrote out 5 more laws. Now, I got pretty excited about this, and I was about ready to leave Cambridge Analytica, so I quit and flew to Wyoming to help her out. I found as many people as I possibly could that had a background in laws, in lobbying, in political campaigning, and we flew out, along with a lot of blockchain entrepreneurs from all over the world, to talk to the members of the House and the Senate in Wyoming. Explain to them, what is blockchain technology? Why is it important for humanity? Why is it important for the citizens of Wyoming? What does blockchain technology as an industry bring to the United States and can bring to the state of Wyoming? Now, we ended up passing almost all of those laws. I mean, we did pass all of those laws. We passed almost all of them unanimously. Unanimously. I don't know how many of you guys work in legislation, but laws basically never pass unanimously. We sat there day in and day out and called members of the House and the Senate out to meet with us. We gave testimony in the Senate about the problems that we had had as blockchain entrepreneurs and the issues that we wanted to see resolved by what we could create as, the Switzerland of America in the state of Wyoming. The amount of money this was going to bring into the state, the amount of entrepreneurs in America that would love to be able to create their own companies in their own country. But with the laws right now, nobody's comfortable enough to do that. So once we passed all 5 of those laws, we were pretty excited, and we started bringing blockchain companies from all around the world to Wyoming. But one of the most important laws that we passed said that your digital assets, your tokens on the blockchain, are a new asset class to be defined by new legislation. But right now, we're going to say that they're property, because we want your digital assets protected. And in order to protect them, you need to have legal recourse. And the property asset class has the most legal recourse in law for you to be protected as an owner of those assets. So your tokens are now your property. That's hugely exciting and has massive ramifications for much more than just the blockchain industry, obviously. Now, about a week after we passed all of those laws, I'm in Puerto Rico speaking on stages like this at the first Restart Week, which was actually started by Brock Pierce. It's a series of conferences that happen over a week. We actually just had the 4th one that I flew here from, which brings together blockchain entrepreneurs and, from around the world and local entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico in order to create and revive the economy after the hurricane. So I'm standing there on stage, and as I'm talking about the reasons why people should be able to own their data and possess their digital assets as their property, some crazy things start going on in the news. I find out that the company that I have just left had obtained Facebook data because Facebook allowed them non-consensually to collect data of tens of millions of people around the world. So how do you think that makes me feel when I'm standing on stage talking about how people should own their data, and I had been one of the faces of Cambridge Analytica, helped them open their offices all around the world and worked there for 4 years to build up that company. And they're literally there undermining my credibility when I don't even work for the company anymore. Disaster. So I decided the only thing that I can possibly do is not just to blow the whistle on my own company, not only to blow the whistle on Facebook, but to blow the whistle on the entire data industry, because it seemed like most people had no idea that it's nearly impossible to track data sets and to know one's data is obtained from individuals, where that data goes, where that data is held, and what it's going to be used for. A lot of these issues are exactly what I had been working with people around the world to solve with blockchain technology. So the idea that all of a sudden there's a massive crisis at the same time as blockchain technology is becoming one of the most popular buzzwords around the world, in my opinion, was an incredible opportunity to start educating the public. So I came out and started talking about how the data industry works, how data is collected, and what are the big issues. So, I mean, why should you guys care about this stuff? Because right now, the issues that we saw last year are the tip of the iceberg. We are still very early in the amount of data that is actually being collected and produced by us as individuals. Every day, every single movement you make, if you have your phone with you, you are producing data sets that are being collected by all of the apps in your phone, that are being collected by your telecoms provider, that are being collected by your government and any other third-party companies that are partnered with the companies that have apps on your phone. Soon, with the increase in IoT, the Internet of Things, even your coffee machine and your refrigerator are going to be collecting data sets about you and feeding those back to companies. And artificial intelligence is going to be making decisions on your behalf based on the data sets that you are sharing in your daily life. Every single year, we are producing exponentially more data than the year before, at least 40% more data than the year before, year on year. Now, before our wallpapers start producing data about how we use our living room, we really need to start thinking about digital asset legislation in a much more serious manner. So, how are we unprotected right now? Right now, especially in the United States of America, but in many countries around the world, you do not own your data at all. The companies that collect it from you own it. Therefore, everything that you do every single day, the assets that you physically produce, you don't own. I mean, if you read terms and conditions before you download an app, or if you read terms and conditions of using certain websites and platforms, then this shouldn't surprise you. But how many of you in here regularly read the terms and conditions? I don't see any hands. I'm a lawyer and I don't even always do it. So it's something to be discussed, but terms and conditions are purposefully made to hide from you how much of your data is being collected. It's meant to trick you into allowing them to have access to your video camera, to your microphone, to all of your other apps so that they can collect as much data about you as possible for your user experience. That's great if you're having a better experience using someone's app, but what about when they get hacked? What kind of experience is that for you when you literally have no idea how much data, personal data about you and your life that company holds? And because you don't own that data, you can't even sue for property damages, although we just successfully did that against Equifax in the state of Minnesota. So everyone can think about that in the future, that if your data is your property, when somebody hacks and you possibly will then have an issue with your fraud, with somebody trying to steal your identity, you will actually be able to have legal recourse. So that's why ownership and data being your property is so incredibly important. It means that companies will start to actually have a legal obligation to protect your property if they are holding your property, right? Now, transparency and opt-in. As I told you, no one here is reading the terms and conditions. That needs to be changed. I'm working with a company called Build Good Tech, which is designing new user interfaces so that instead of ticking a little box that you have no idea what you've just agreed to, you will have a pop-up window and you will be able to see every single thing that you're agreeing to. Very simple, not in legalese. You don't need a law degree in order to understand. And you'll be able to toggle on and off. Do I agree to this? Do I not? Do I want to share my data with these third-party partners or not? Do I want to monetize my data for political parties or maybe only for advertisers, right? So these are the types of options that we should start to be able to get and start to understand. Blockchain technology was built with transparency as one of its core features, and the opt-in infrastructure can be encoded into a smart contract to make sure that everything that you've agreed to cannot technically be contravened by a company. It's huge. Now, permission structures and traceability, again, distributed ledger technology solves so many of these problems. It's so exciting. I mean, it's a huge opportunity that you will be able to track and trace where your data goes if it's traded on a blockchain. Very exciting. There are other ways to look at tracking and traceability, but you should be able to know where your data sets are. You should be able to know who those companies are sharing them with, who the government's sharing it with. Otherwise, how are you ever going to feel comfortable wanting to share more data? And that's something I want to make sure I touch on in a little bit. So again, monetization rights. So if companies around the world have a multi-trillion-dollar industry in the data trade, and you're getting none of that, but they are your assets, that's kind of confusing. When has an oil and gas company ever walked up onto somebody's property and started drilling for oil, and then the person who owns the land does not get any monetary value in return? So we're looking to change that. Just because digital assets are intangible does not mean that you should not be compensated for them. And it's very easy in a platform if someone wants to trade you their tokens for the usage of your data. I really hoped that Facebook was going to announce that their blockchain strategy was to give you Facebook tokens in return for giving your data. Obviously, they're just doing transactions in WhatsApp, so who's surprised by that? But one can always keep hopeful. Now, privacy versus AI and data science. This is something that's incredibly important to me because a lot of people bill me as a privacy campaigner. I'm not. In fact, I think people could share more data in order to solve some of the world's greatest problems. Do you know that most of the data sets that exist when researchers are creating medicines is the data from 18 to 35-year-old young white men that go to medical trials in college? So why do you think women and minorities have a lot harder of a time treating diseases and curing illnesses? That's the reason, because the rest of us are not data inputs into medical research. So if we could start to share more data, if everybody could become a data input into medical research because we felt confident that our data was secure, that it was anonymized, we knew where it was going to be held, we knew who was going to use it, I think we might solve cancer pretty quickly. What about in smart city situations? We might actually be able to start thinking about issues like stopping traffic accidents, stopping mass shootings and terrorism using this type of data tracking and advanced forms of AI. I believe in data science, or I would have never worked for a company like Cambridge Analytica in the first place. So what are the features of some of the current laws? Now, GDPR was enacted on May 25th, 2018 of last year, and then not that long afterwards, the California Consumer Protection Act. Now, both of these are looking at a few different issues. Basis for consent, so talking about opt-in infrastructure, giving rights to individuals for you to request what data is being held on you, where it is, where they got it from, and also time allowed for you to make a request and for them to respond. And if there is a data breach, making sure that there is a financial penalty for that to the company. Now, I have something so exciting to announce, which is that last Wednesday and Thursday, in the state of Wyoming, the governor just signed 8 more of our blockchain bills into law, and they went into effect March 1st, this past Friday. 8 new blockchain laws. It's absolutely huge. This is landmark legislation that really makes Wyoming, in my opinion, be better than Switzerland for you to start a blockchain company. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why. Number 1, we just passed House Bill 57, which is a fintech sandbox. So the incredible banking commissioner, Albert Faulkner, in the state of Wyoming, him and the Secretary of State have now authorized government budgets in order for blockchain companies to apply to be able to work in a legal and regulatory sandbox. It means that you can start testing, building new types of tech while we're still working on the rules that are going to govern that. It's a huge opportunity for blockchain companies from around the world to come and decide to see if they want to build in Wyoming. Now, we also had an update to one of the laws that we passed last March. This is House Bill 62, and that specifically now says that your digital assets are defined as intangible personal property. It's the first Own Your Data legislation that exists, as far as I really understand, in the United States, but perhaps the world. It's incredible. On top of that, we passed House Bill 70, which allows the state of Wyoming to start using blockchain filing systems. House Bill 74, special purpose depository institutions. We've created the first crypto banks, a banking license from the state of Wyoming that allows organizations to apply to just handle digital assets as a specialty. We're not talking about fiat currencies. These are digital asset banks. It's so exciting. Next is the Special Electric Utility Agreement, House Bill 113. That allows us to have companies that are doing cryptocurrency mining in the state of Wyoming get the same access to special pricing and special treatment as utility companies. Wyoming already has some of the cheapest power in the world because of the supercomputers that is based there. But now we're getting an even bigger discount. So if you guys are running mining operations, I suggest you look at Wyoming as a choice. The next, corporate stock certificate tokens. Yes, in the state of Wyoming, you can now legally issue tokenized stocks. Fantastic for everybody out there that loves their STOs. Banking technology and stock revisions. Now, existing banks can have record keeping on the blockchain. They can use electronic records when dealing with digital assets. Also, there's a digital asset law, SF125, where we classify digital assets by type. So virtual currencies, digital securities, and digital consumer tokens, and each of them have specific treatments under the existing commercial laws. So it really helps entrepreneurs and investors in the blockchain industry from understanding the rules that we need to play by. Unfortunately, I have to say this, but how many people in this room have either participated in building a blockchain company or invested in a blockchain company that now, because of lack of legislation and regulation, has had to give money back to investors, or maybe even worse? I don't know. I see, unfortunately, a handful of hands out there. Now, the reason why this type of legislation is so important is because we need to know the rules that we are playing by in order to build these companies. How can you build a company when there are no rules, and then once rules are written, you realize that you weren't playing by rules that didn't exist, and now you have to give all the money back? Or you have to file for bankruptcy because your company did not obey by laws that were not there when you started. So I'm not a person to say, throw regulation on everything and that's going to solve the problem. No, definitely not. But if you have common sense legislation that is led by individuals that are entrepreneurs and know what the problems actually are in the industry, then I think we're going to see a lot of success when working with governments in an open forum. So what are the opportunities for the future? One is education. On one of the last panels before me, a lot of the people were talking about how do you make this information tangible? If people do not understand blockchain technology, or they don't even understand the data that they produce, why are they going to fight for their digital rights or their rights to their digital assets? It's something that is not so easy to understand because you can't even see it. To imagine what a data set actually looks like and what a blockchain is difficult for even some of the most technical people. So I totally understand that. Now, one of the coolest programs that I've seen so far, I met with Megan Smith. She was the Chief Technology Officer of the United States of America, the CTO of the White House under Barack Obama. And she has started working with an organization called the DQ Foundation. So instead of IQ or EQ, your intelligence or your emotional intelligence, we're talking about digital intelligence. So this is a new program that starts to look at all the different facets of your digital rights so that when you are a child and you are going to school, you start to learn about your digital rights. What are your rights under your laws? How can you protect yourself online? How do you keep your information safe? What is an encryption? How do you understand all of these things when you are young? And it's important for us to start teaching kids when they are very, very young, because a lot of the legislation that protects children in a lot of other industries does not protect them online, unfortunately. So education is one. Creating new legislation is the second one. That's obviously my favorite. And then creating the types of technologies that solve these problems. Now, how am I doing that? I'm working with some incredible people at my trade association, the Digital Asset Trade Association, which is DATA for short. Clever. And we co-founded this organization last year after we first all met while working together in Wyoming. Some of us had known each other in the blockchain industry before, but most of us flew to Wyoming and worked with those senators until we got those laws passed. And we decided we need a lobbying organization that is for the blockchain industry because it didn't exist. It does now. As of a couple months ago, we finally got our 501c6 status through, which is so exciting. That means we're an official lobbying firm. All of us at the Trade Association are allowed to sit on the Hill in DC and sit in Congress and work with legislators in order to make common sense legislation. Right now, we have been so successful in Wyoming that we are helping other states, the federal government, and governments around the world to create legislation that is as common sense, as intelligent, and as supportive of blockchain entrepreneurship and technologists as possible, right? So we're working in a few different policy areas. One is definitions of different technology terms that are not well defined in law and regulation. We're working on digital identity, which, as you can imagine, is one of the most exciting issues that is being solved by blockchain technology today. And we're looking at privacy legislation under human rights frameworks, both internationally and nationally. You have a right to privacy. And although I said I am not a privacy campaigner, your right to privacy and the right to protect your personal information and data is an incredible next step when we're talking about data rights and digital rights as the newest form of human right. That's when we're really going to get somewhere. And then obviously banking and fintech laws. Now, our current work is engagement with legislators and regulators. We're engaging at the federal level now in the United States. And actually, what the federal legislators have done is to basically copy the legislation that was written in Wyoming because it has been so successful. Hundreds of companies from all around the world have come to Wyoming, and it's bringing a lot of money to the state. The universities there now have blockchain technology and developer courses. They're now teaching students different forms of mining. They're now working on US government blockchain technology pilot projects with government budgets. It's hugely exciting. And what we really want to do is have a united voice from the blockchain industry, not just in the United States, but all around the world, so we can talk to legislators about the problems that blockchain technologists face, how they can help us fix that, and therefore bring a new, very exciting, booming industry to their country, right? We also do both public and private briefings for the private and public sector. So if anybody wants to really understand the benefits of this type of legislation, we're very happy to arrange that for you. We do grassroots activism. You really have to show up in person sometimes when you're talking about complex issues that you really care about, and you need to get someone else to really care about, even though they don't particularly understand it. So it's important that we'll be knocking on doors, running digital campaigns, even running TV ad campaigns when we get closer to certain votes. And we are developing sets of best practices as well. What should blockchain entrepreneurs be working with? What should data companies be working with? What rules should they be abiding by in order to be ethical, but also still have a productive business model? It's important on both sides. And then also support and training. So if you have compliance departments and legal departments that don't often talk to each other too much, we can obviously help solve some of those problems. So this is my ask for anybody that is interested in learning more about these topics, which is to join the Digital Asset Trade Association. So you can either write to me, which is Brittany.Kaiser, first name, last name, @digitalasset.org. Or you can write directly to our administrators at info@digitalasset.org. We take individuals, academic institutions, and even countries that are joining up to the trade association so we can help work with you in order to make legislation work for you and for the economy in your country and or your company, obviously. So really look forward to hearing from any of you guys. And if you have any questions, I'll be over here afterwards. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Wow. Brittany, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to rush you off the stage. I do want to say this. She's just put the word out. I did mention earlier that the Great Hack, the documentary about the experience, it came out at Sundance. The Netflix premiere is going to be in July.
Yes.
Now, one of the conditions of this is that she is under a little bit of a media quiet time. I think, if you were doing an IPO, they'd call this the quiet period.
It's true.
But so the media can't interview her, but you just got a personal invitation to reach out to her because she is not just taking her experience, she is not just whistleblowing and making noise, she is using that experience to drive change in her native United States of America, and she has invited you to join her to make that same kind of positive change around the world, in your home. So please come and talk to Brittany.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brittany Kaiser. Thank you.